This is a jam-packed meeting. Like, full disclosure, I got a lot of content in here. I know that I'm going to be going through some things maybe more quickly than you might prefer, but I want to get through it all. I'll save questions for the end unless there's something that's so pressing that you're like, oh, I need to hear it. But what I will say is this. The last few weeks, I feel like I've just gotten a real estate education from around the world. So, you know, I spent the first portion of the trip in LA. I went to Engage, which is Coldwell Banker's Global Luxury Real Estate Conference or Summit. That particular event was probably the best Coldwell Banker event I've ever been to. I mean, every single person in there, I've been with Coldwell Banker for 13 years. It was awesome. I did not push it. I apologize to you guys. I really didn't push it locally. And the reason I didn't push it locally is because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Like, you know, I kind of signed up for it last minute, and, you know, I went out to kind of get a pulse on it. It was awesome. So I brought back some really good content from that. They're going to do that annually. So anybody who sees the advertisements for it moving forward, sign up. It really is that good. The second thing that I went to, I had a 3-day break in between, and I met up with a really good friend of mine who happens to be an independent broker in California. So I'm going to talk about that because there's some learnings that I had from that. And then the last thing was President's Council, which are the top brokers in the world. So, and thank you guys for helping me get there, because it doesn't happen without you. So I'm going to go through all the different things that I learned throughout. And I'm hoping that you get some value from it, because I believe you will. So, my West Coast lunch and learn. Part 1, California. So, in California, it was Engaged, like I said. I think that before I even get into the learnings from this event, probably the biggest takeaway was the vibe. I mean, it just was like so apparent that the people that were there, they're literally the top agents in the world. Like, you know, number one agent in the world was sitting next to me, and, you know, and biggest team and everything else. And so I'm having these conversations. There's 400 people that went, and when I say from around the world, I literally mean that. Like, you know, there were 20-something countries that were represented. So it was really a pulse of the industry that like I haven't seen before. And the vibe was a vibe of sharing, everybody trying to help one another. Like, you know, when you have some of the top agents that get up and say, like, listen, if anybody needs help on a listing presentation, call me, I'll give you my whole presentation. Like, that's different. I mean, it's just it hits different than we're used to. So that was the vibe of it. I felt like the energy was there, and it was very apparent that it wasn't about our competitors. Like, it wasn't like, none of these people could care less about any of the competitors. It was more about, like, this is who we are, this is what we do, let's do it. So, you know, the biggest takeaway, though, was the market. And I'm going to share this story because I don't think that there's anything I'm going to say for the rest of the time that was a more powerful statement than this. Is they get up on stage, so I don't even remember who it was, it's irrelevant, but there's 400 people in this crowd. They get up on stage and they say, by a show of hands, who has felt a downshift in your market in the last 2 months? Every single person in the whole entire crowd raised their hand. Everyone. So, you know, we talk about real estate being local. It is. Real estate's local. But when everyone around the world who's doing business at the highest level possible raises their hand to that question, it's changing. Something's happening. So I put that out there not to scare you guys. I put that out there because, like, that's a reality we're facing. You have to just realize it. There are going to be a lot of significant changes coming. I'm not doom and gloom, and that was not the vibe. It wasn't like, oh my God, the sky is falling, we're gonna like all be out of business tomorrow. Like, that was not it at all. It was, let's face the fact that it's a changing marketplace. We know it's a changing marketplace. I don't know if it's a recession. I don't know if it's just shifting in certain ways. We don't know all of that yet. But we know that it's definitely trending in that direction. And the second part to that is, great, well, how do we go about continuing to do business at a high level, you know, despite of that? So, in spite of that. So that was definitely the biggest takeaway. What I did, though, for the purpose of this presentation is I broke it into 15 different people that I was in front of that I kind of took little bits and pieces from. And it's over the course of the 10 days that I was away. So number one, The Jill Zeder Group. I don't know if you guys know who the Jill Zeder Group is, but they're down in Miami. To give you context for who they are, they're the #1 real estate team in the country. And they have been for years. They did over $2 billion worth of GCI last year, or excuse me, of volume last year. So, no, I said it right the first time. No, I didn't, volume. So $2 billion in terms of volume. I mean, that's like, we could put together a bunch of different offices, and that's what we're talking. I mean, that's the level that they're on. So awesome presentation by them. I really enjoyed what they said, but Danny Hertzberg, who's this gentleman right here, he got up on stage and he said something to me that I thought was really powerful. He talked about, what is your magic number? So the thought process is, what is your magic number? If I got you $2 million to sell my, if I got $2 million to sell my house, I'd move tomorrow. So we have this thought process that, well, this person's never gonna move. They just bought a house yesterday. Like, so why would they move? And his answer to that was, don't ever assume that they're not gonna move, ever. Because all of these people that we're encountering, and this is, I mean, keep in mind, like, his marketplace is this. Like, literally the most exclusive real estate in the world, some of it. And when you talk about this, like, his clientele are hedge fund managers. Like, these are like the most, like, from a wealth perspective, he has some of the biggest and most wealthiest clients in the world that he's dealing with. And what he said that I thought was like so interesting is, he's like, they don't need the money. They don't need the money. It's not about that. Like, we always assume that they need the money. My clients don't need the money. They could afford whatever the hell they want to afford. And yet, when I go to them and I ask them, well, what is your magic number? You tell me, like, what is it going to take that you would move over? They always give me a number. Because their thing is like, ultimately, like, it's still an investment for them. And even though they might not want to move, he goes, you'd be surprised, almost all of them give me a number. And he goes, and the craziest thing is what we've been seeing more recently is people are giving us numbers that are not where even the market is. They've just been giving us this magic number that's achievable. And so I thought about this, and I'm like, well, if hedge fund managers are out there giving numbers that are realistic because the market is so inflated, well, I'm sure all of our clients would do the same thing. So the thought process on that is, you have to just kind of ingrain that into your like day-to-day, like, that whole magic number thought process is like, hey, like, I know you're not thinking about selling, but like, I'm just curious, like, what would your magic number be? If you got X, what would you move? Like, whatever that number is. And I think that it'll spark some more listing opportunities for you. So that's why I brought it up. Number 2, and I'm gonna go through some of these really quick. These are like, quick points. Number 2, Ricardo Rodriguez. He's from Boston. He's one of the top agents in the country out of our Boston market. So this is like a business approach that he took. He said, I want you to figure out what your annual income is. So that should be very easy. Just figure out what your annual income is. You could go on your tax forms. Then figure out how many hours you worked. What's your hourly pay? He said, figure out that annual pay, and then don't do anything that doesn't make you more than your hourly pay. And that's the way he approaches the business. So what does that mean? That means that if somebody has a CO and if you're making $500 an hour, like that's your hourly pay, don't do COs. Like, just don't do them anymore. Find somebody else that you could pay for 25, 50, whatever an hour, and just figure out people that you could plug into those positions. And the reason why is, very simply, you're worth more than that time-wise. Like, but we don't think about this. We don't approach the business like a business. Some of us do, but a lot of people don't. And by the way, if your annual pay, or your hourly pay rather, is lower than COs, all right, don't pay anybody to do a CO. You do your own COs. But it's a very easy way to approach what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing in business, and create more time for yourself to go out and actually build your business further. So the flip side of that is, for the people that maybe should be doing more COs, well, great. Now you have an opportunity in our office or in our marketplace to pick up more business and grow your annual pay or your hourly pay. So I think it works both ways. The point is like, it's synergistic. We can work with each other to try to get there. Number 3, Dawn McKenna Group. So Dawn McKenna, for those of you who took the luxury course, she was one of the speakers, as was Ricardo. So Dawn actually has a thriving business in Illinois, and she also has a thriving business in Florida. She has a big team. She does business in both places. She does it very well in both places. They're legit businesses in both locations. So Dawn got up, and there were a handful of talking points that she made, but one thing that she said that I found was interesting. You know, we're in an industry right now where agents and teams are like kind of like taking the lead rather than brokers. And that shift has been happening for a long time as people are saying like the broker is not as important, it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna argue that point one way or another, but I thought Dawn's point was a good one on this. She brought up Michael Jordan. So she talked about Michael Jordan, and for those of you who don't know, this is like my hero growing up. Michael Jordan was like, basketball was all I did growing up when I was little, and he was my man. So, love Jordan, you know, love what he represents because he just worked harder and he just like had this killer instinct. Welcome, by the way. So, one of the things she said about Jordan that it's funny because like, you know, you have this hero in your mind that you've like watched for so many years, but you don't necessarily think of like all of what made Michael what he was. Like some of it I have, but I never thought of this point. She said, so you have Michael Jordan, and she's like, but then you have Nike. And she goes, my question to this crowd is, would Michael Jordan be Michael Jordan if it wasn't for Nike? And would Nike be Nike if it wasn't for Michael Jordan? And I think the answer is neither of them would be what they are. And the reason why is it doesn't mean that Michael wasn't great. Michael was great. Michael was the best of all time. But the thing is Nike made Michael Jordan into an icon, literally. Like, you know, they got the logo and the shoe brand and like all of these different things. They put him on billboards all around the world. He's the most popular athlete in the history of time because Nike plastered his face and his image everywhere. Like that was the business relationship between Nike and Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan rewarded Nike because Nike wouldn't be what Nike is if it wasn't for Michael Jordan. Like he put them on the face. You know, Nike was like kind of teetering. They were getting beat by all their competitors at the time until Michael Jordan did his thing. So, you know, it must be the shoes. Like you remember those old commercials? Well, the truth is like there is like this correlation between, you know, a brand and an individual. And that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had with like all of Engage. It's like leaning into Coldwell Banker and getting the most value you could get out of Coldwell Banker is crucial. So what she went with is she said, we forget who we are. We have all these competitors that come into this marketplace and all of these marketplaces, and they make these claims about what they do, and we have this new tool, and we have this new way of doing business. Like, we've been the 800-pound gorilla in this space for years. Like, we're the #1 real estate company on the planet, and we have been for years and years and years, but we don't necessarily think of it that way, and it's like, we need to. Like, we should be proud of who we are. We should, you know, push that agenda because that'll help us in business. To that end, I don't know if you guys have paid any attention to this, but this right here, it's called the Report 2022. I'm just gonna tell you, if you haven't seen this, and you could get it all online, so it's not like, you know, it's not like this is like an exclusive thing that you can't get a hold of. One of the things that Coldwell Banker is doing that I love is, so we hear like, I'm just gonna use Sotheby's as an example. Sotheby's and Christie's, they kind of have the same appeal where they're trying to like, you know, push out this image of, you know, we have a higher price point and we have like a higher scale than, welcome. We have a higher scale than like, you know, than other, you know, brokers, other agencies, you know, companies, whatever you want to call it. No, they don't. We have the highest price point in the world, period. Average sales price, Coldwell Banker blows everybody else out of the water. So when we started to look into this further and further, like the thought process said, like this is Coldwell Banker, like on the strategy side, they said, why are we not leveraging this as much as we should? Like we literally like the most exclusive company in the world when it comes to price point. Like we have more $1 million sales than anybody out there. It's like not even close. Why are we not leveraging this enough? And the answer is we're going to. Our thought process now is global luxury is going to be a monumental part of what we're doing. Like, that's a big push for where the direction we're going in. And you're gonna see all sorts of collateral come out on global luxury. You're gonna see branding in our offices that are gonna change. We're gonna push a higher price point because isn't that what all of you guys want? Every person in this room wants a higher price point if they could get it. Like, so the more tools you have, the more, leverage you have over the materials, like naturally the better off you're gonna be in terms of price point. So that is gonna be a big push. If you haven't checked out the report, why I'm pointing this out more so than anything else is it's great for content for social media. So like, if you think about like, just what you're pushing out on a regular basis, you could pull all sorts of stats. And what you could also do is when you're sitting in front of a seller who's a luxury seller, why not have the conversation to them and say, listen, like, not only are we the luxury leader in the world and locally, but we actually put out like the best report on luxury real estate out of any other company. Let me go through this with you and show you what the trends are, because we track this annually. Like, it's a different conversation than most people are having when you're sitting across from a seller. Certainly, it goes back to that whole Michael Jordan Nike thing. Like, we're trying to put you in a position to like basically get more billboards up of yourself. And I really do think that the direction they're going in with global luxury is a great one. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I loved this one. And I'm just gonna be real, where I'm always transparent with you guys, like, so I don't pull punches, and I'm not about to right now. So I am gonna talk about the competitors in this, and I'm not trying to badmouth anybody, I'm just trying to be very real about like how I see the situation, so take it for what it is. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, anybody ever see Braveheart? Yeah? All right. So yeah, I love Braveheart. So there's this scene in Braveheart. It's probably like one of the most epic scenes, if not the most epic scene in Braveheart. And it basically says he's riding on his horse and he's like yelling to the crowd, and there's a member of his army that basically, William Wallace this is, Mel Gibson, but there's a member of his army that says like, you're not William Wallace. William Wallace is 7 feet tall. And so he fires right back at him. He said, yes, I've heard. He kills men by the hundreds, and if he were here, he'd consume the English with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his arse. So I crack up every time he says this, because it's just like, he's like, I am William Wallace. Like, don't tell me like, who I am. That's me. And like, you just heard the legend, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like the legend is true. Like, this is who I am. Like, let's go fight the English. So, great scene in the movie, but I think about this, and I'm actually going to do it in a little bit of a reverse order, but I think of Keller Williams. So you guys might not have, some of you have lived this personally, but like I definitely lived this. When I got to Maplewood, we were getting killed by Keller Williams. Like, every person who I spoke to was like, why would you work for Coldwell Banker? Like, I'm gonna be down the street. Like, no. I remember, I always think of Barbara Lawrence. She's the one that made me crack up the most, because Barbara Lawrence, she was a $20 million producer at the time. And I'm new to the market. It's my first time managing an office. I don't know anything about anything. I just know that Barbara Lawrence used to work for us. And so I'm not bashful. I picked up the phone and I called her and I said, hey, like, I'm Michael Pennisi. I want to introduce myself. I'm the manager of like Coldwell Banker down the street. She starts laughing. And I'm like, what? And she was like, you're trying to recruit me? And I was like, well, I was trying to say hello, but like, what made you leave? Would you ever consider coming back? It was like that kind of conversation. And her answer to me at the time was, let me be clear. I will never in my entire life come back to that operation, to that office. It was miserable there. I love Keller Williams. It was like this, like, forget it, like practically screaming in my ear. And I was like, all right, good talk. So we get off the phone, and it was a lot of that. It was a lot of that, is the honest truth. Like, I was getting beat up like every single day. And I'm not like, this is not a bad thing, but then our top producer left to go there. So that was a 43% market swing. When Robert left our office, you've heard me say this plenty of times, but it literally was 43% of our office's production walked down the street. Like, so that's like, 86% swing. So we went from being like here in the marketplace to like Keller Williams and us. Weikert was beating us at that time. And so, which kind of puts things in perspective. so the thought process is this. The reason why I bring this up is because now I talk to agents, and with very little exception, people don't even consider Keller Williams. It's not even a conversation like, oh, I'm thinking about going to Keller. Like, I haven't heard that in years, like literally years, which is insane to me given where Keller Williams was in the marketplace and where they are today. That's not my competition any longer. Like, and I'm not knocking them, it's not the point of it. Like, I'm just being real about the situation. That's just not the competition right this second. Like, the competition switched, and now I'm hearing like all sorts of, we haven't really heard Side or Real, but believe me, they're coming. Like, so we have Compass and we have EXP, and we have these different, like, all these different new models. That's why I brought up Side and Real, because like in different places in the country, you're getting like, a different push as to what models are coming into play. In California, you're dealing a lot more with Side than you were. Real is now kind of like a take on EXP undercut Keller Williams, and now Real is undercutting EXP. And so like there's this like fight over like this, this production and all that stuff. All that's fine. Like I'm not saying that one company's better than another. I don't really care about all that. I just, like, people keep coming up to me and asking me about all these different models. And I'm to the point where I feel like it's this, like Charlie Brown's teacher. Like, I want, like, about like, oh my God, you don't understand, Compass did a happy hour today. I don't care. Like, you don't understand, like EXP did blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Like, I appreciate the fact that you guys like come to me with this stuff, and like, believe me, it's helpful to like understand what competitors are doing. I'm not trying to say that like we can't learn from companies. Of course we can. But every single time like somebody tells me about how wonderful Compass is, like all I think about is Braveheart, like with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his ass. Like, because it's just like, it's this like the legend, but I don't believe the hype. I just don't. And I really believe that it's a Keller Williams situation where it's the shiny penny right now. And by the way, for those of you who've been doing real estate long enough, it was RE/MAX before that. Like, so it just goes in cycles. I understand how that is. But I really did a deep dive on the West Coast about some of these competitors. I did. And I know a lot of our competitors really well, but like, I'm just for the sake of, I want to just get it out there so you know my position on it. Later in this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about where I see the real estate industry, what I've learned from my West Coast trip, where I see our competitors, and what the challenges we have, they have, and all of that. Because I'm tired of talking about it, and I just want to kind of let it be known. So, number 4, Jade Mills. Anybody know who that is? Jade Mills is like one of the most classy individuals that you'll ever meet. She is just like an absolute sweetheart, and she also is one of the top real estate agents of all time. I mean, she sold more real estate than anybody. She's the queen of Beverly Hills, or Hollywood, I should say. So they call her the realtor to the stars. Like, she just does like all these crazy price points and everything else. So she got up there, and she was on stage, super humble, and she got up there, and she made me laugh because she's like, this is like here agent-wise. And she says this: I love people. I don't know much about real estate. And I was like, you know what? Like, that is the epitome of our business. Like, people get out, like sometimes I'll have somebody say to me, like, new agents do this a lot. They'll sit in for, some of you might have done this, so I'm not taking shots. But new agents come to me and say, like, oh, I'm getting into real estate, like, because I love HGTV and I love houses. And I'm like, well, that's not gonna matter. Like, I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's the truth. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't love houses. Like, I love real estate too, full disclosure. But like, it's all fake HGTV. Like, it's not the real business day to day. Like, people that come up to me and say, I love working with people, like, well, that resonates with me. Because this is the business we're in. We're in a people business. We're in a relationship business. It's like, how many people do you know? How many relationships could you foster and all that? So I thought that was an awesome comment. Number 5. I don't know if you know who this guy is, Gary Gold. Anybody? You're gonna know him in 1 second. Gary Gold sold the Playboy Mansion. So, serious producer. He literally just joined us in Beverly Hills. He left a competitor to come to us about a week or so, maybe a little bit longer, before this conference. And so got into a conversation with Gary, who, nice guy, like certainly one of the biggest producers on the West Coast. And it was a big deal that he came to us. And so got into a conversation with him, and he said something that I found interesting. He said, I joined Coldwell Banker because Coldwell Banker has the best network in the world. And I was like, yeah, we do have the best network in the world. Now, sometimes we don't leverage it appropriately, and I think we need to do a better job of leveraging it. But the network that we have is the reason that a top producer, and the reason that a lot of these top producers have come to us and have stayed with us. So I'm going to call you out, Ann, if you don't mind. But so Ann was the only person that showed up to engage. And by the way, you could attest to this. We had zero conversation before. It wasn't like, Ann, come to engage. None of that. She just saw the advertisement. She signed up because she wanted to see what it was all about. And she's trying to grow her price point and get into luxury real estate. Kudos to you. So first of all, this was taken at an event. Was that the coolest venue? So they did an event at the Academy of Motion Pictures, and it basically, you walked out onto this elevated 4th level, something like that, auditorium space, and it just overlooked the Hollywood Hills. It was so cool. But we're there, and here was my takeaway, and this is the reason I'm bringing up Ann about network. With little exception, 1 or 2 people, Ann was the only one from New Jersey. So there's no doubt in my mind that every person that Ann met, she's building a contact from around the country, and she is the face of New Jersey. That to me is how these networks are built. You're not gonna build a network if you're not in front of somebody, if you're not having engagement or connecting with them on some level. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking about, what are our feeder markets? Our feeder markets are Brooklyn, our feeder markets are New York City, our feeder markets are Jersey City, Hoboken. How many of you have built an established relationship with people in those places? Those are the people that are sending business this way. We just bought one of the largest, I think it was the largest independent brokerage in New York City, Warburg. That's a big deal. It's a really big deal. We have a serious presence in New York City that we've never had before, Coldwell Banker specifically. We had Corcoran, but we didn't really have this great relationship with Corcoran like I wish we did. We didn't. We do with Warburg. Figure out a way to get in front of Warburg agents. We have this relationship, let's utilize it. Number 6, Tim Allen. Anybody has been watching my Instagram page? How do you like it? Any good? All right, hold on. So Tim Allen is long-term, I think he was with us for 30 years. He's one of the top agents in the world. He talked about we are not split. By the way, he's out of Pebble Beach, California. He gets up on stage and just like a class act, and he says, thought process-wise, he says, we are not splitting the same pie. And so he goes, we have this thought process. If you saw my Instagram, I'm going to repeat some of this, but he said we have the same thought process that there's a pie. We have market share in our market. And if somebody else takes this much market share, well, that's less than I could get. So I got to battle them for that market share. That is not his approach at all. His approach is very simple. We could always make more pies. And so his thought process is, you know what? Some of the best things that I ever did in my market is some of the video marketing that I did to grow, to get people to pay attention to my marketplace from outside of my marketplace. And I was thinking about this in the context of New York City. If we could figure out a way to create good content to drive New York City buyers this way, we've made more pies. That's the answer. We've made more pies. And by the way, think about I just remember being in sales. When I was in sales, one of the most frustrating things in the world for me was when I went out, I was working with a buyer client, let's say, change your perspective, but I was working with a buyer client and they would be like, oh, I bought in Westchester. And it'd be because that was the marketplace. I was competing against Westchester. I was competing against, in my market, I was competing a little bit against Montclair and Bergen County. So that was the exchange. Getting them to fall in love with here is a big deal. That to me, when you're trying to develop content for social media, that would be a target market for me because that's growing the pie. That's getting people from out of this area here. Big deal. Number 7, Carrie Wells. Anybody know Carrie? No? Okay. So Carrie Wells is in Palm Springs? Aspen, excuse me. Thank you, appreciate it. I was mixing them up. Real estate is a hedge against inflation. This is such an important point right now. We are in a marketplace that 8.5% inflation for this past year. 8.5%. It's the highest inflation we've had in years. I think it's like 40 years or something like that. So when you have that much inflation, and by the way, for those of you who don't like follow what that means, go to the grocery store, try to buy bananas, they're more expensive. Try to buy, go to the gas station, try to get more gas, it's more expensive. Like everything in life is more expensive. Right now, it's more expensive. So the thought process is, that is inflation, by the way, in case you don't follow. So when you have 8.5% inflation, which if you think about the Fed wants inflation to be 2%. We're 6.5% higher than what they're looking for a healthy economy. So everybody's feeling that push right now. That's why they raised interest rates as high as they have right now, because it's basically the Fed trying to lower inflation. The cost of money goes up. Again, if you didn't watch Instagram, real quick, the cost of money goes up. The cost of money is interest rates. Like, you raise that, naturally people have to pull back from their spending because it's costing them more money. When they pull back from spending, the demand decreases. On the supply side, the people that are out there selling products and services, they then have to lower prices to try to increase the amount of demand that they have to sell those products. That's essentially what they're trying to do to decrease inflation right now. But I don't know if you guys realize this, and like, I did not realize this to the extent that I didn't look into this until later. So average rents across New Jersey has soared by nearly 33%. What rights do tenants have? Manhattan rents have never been this expensive. Rents reach insane levels across the US with no end in sight. You have all of these different things. We're talking about inflation. We're talking about the amount of cost that things are. Well, think about this. Rents are a cost. Rents are going up. If you own real estate investments, you are making more money because the rents have risen. That is a hedge in terms of the money that you have against inflation, because everything's going up. Well, so are rents. So now you're hedging your bet against what is happening in the environment, in the economy. They're pulling their money out of Wall Street. Wall Street's getting killed right now. So when all these people are think of big money. When big money pulls their money out of Wall Street and they know that the market's changing, get them to buy multifamilies, get them to buy commercial buildings, get them to buy investment properties in general. That is the hedge against inflation. If we're not screaming that from the top of the highest tower in life, I don't know what we're doing, because it's such a true point. That's what these people need. They need guidance on how to protect their money in an environment like today. That's the way you protect it. And by the way, the one other piece to this is real estate, overall, prices appreciate long term. So it's a long-term bet, but they need somewhere long-term to put their money right now, because the economy's who knows where it's going next right this second. Number 8, the keynote speaker for this event was Julie Rice. Julie Rice was the co-founder of SoulCycle. So I wasn't super familiar with SoulCycle. She worked for SoulCycle. She works for another startup right now. I'm blanking out on the name. But she also worked for WeWork for a while. So she's pretty well accomplished entrepreneur. The long and the short of it is there wasn't a lot that I took away from her segment, but there was one particular thing that I thought was really good. She said, "We are a culture of yes. Doesn't mean we always say yes, but we work hard to find the yes." I just feel like if there's anything that real estate is, it's that. Our job is trying to figure out how to get our clients to a yes. Our job is trying to figure out how to help our clients and give them what they need, but it doesn't necessarily mean we always say yes. It's just that should be our mindset. So that was my one takeaway from Julie, but I thought it was a good one. Number 9. I had lunch with an agent by the name of Monica Carr. So Monica Carr I think she's been in the business for 18 or 19 years. She is very big into Tom Ferry coaching, and now she has another coach that she's working with. She does about 1.3 million in production and growing. And the reason why I'm bringing her up is she started to get into what she's doing with Instagram and what she's doing with video in particular. And I thought it was awesome. And I've never heard this approach. And it's such you're gonna hear it and be like, duh. Like it's a no-brainer approach, but it just really makes a lot of sense. So if you go on, I encourage you to like check her her Instagram out. She has 3,600 followers, give or take, but it's like growing like very quickly because she just started doing this approach not too long ago. So her videos look like this. Like this is like just a screenshot from her Instagram. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people say to me, you know, I would love to get into video, but the problem is I just don't have time. Like that's my issue. I just don't have enough time. Like, you know, either that or I don't like the way I look in front of the camera. And somebody got up on stage and talked about that and was like, that's the way you look. I was like, so I started cracking up over that. And it's true. Like if you don't, like, would you show up to a client's house if they called you to list their house? Of course you would. Like get on camera. But so she goes into video, and what she talked about is this, and it was like, I mean, for the ladies in the room, you'll probably appreciate this more than most. She was like, all right, I don't want to get in front of the camera and not look good. Like, I want to be like, you know, my best looking self, and I'll explain why I said about the ladies. So what she does is she picks a date on the calendar, let's just call it the 1st, and she goes out and she gets her hair done. She goes to a stylist and she looks all pretty from her hair. And she gets a makeup artist to come out, and she like looks all pretty makeup-wise. And then she gets like scripts that she's been kind of putting together, like certain things that she does throughout the entire month, all the different things that she wants to record. She puts them all together, and then she hires a professional videographer for the day. So it's not like 100 sessions, like, you know, video sessions all month long. All she's doing is time blocking. It's 1 day a month. And she's looking her best in every single video, and she has like 5 or 6 wardrobe changes throughout the day. Like, you know, and she'll like say like, all right, I'm gonna wear this for this section, and then I'm gonna switch to this outfit, and then I'm gonna switch to that outfit, and it's just like literally a whole day of her just recording these videos. I was like, and by the way, it also drastically limits the expense. Because from an expense perspective, to hire a videographer for a few hours, like, and just like bang these out, versus hiring that videographer day in and day out, I see Siobhan going, yep. So, I mean, it's the truth. It's such an easier way to approach this. So now, when she finishes her days of videos and recordings, every one of them looks like she like, you know, just got her hair done and just got her makeup done, and they're all perfect because they're all previously prepared. It's not like, oh, in between appointments, none of that. And then the videographer sends her back, you know, 30 different clips or 40 different clips or whatever it is, and she just releases the content every day of the week, every day of the month rather. So I just thought that was like, no, like why wouldn't we do this? Like it just makes so much sense. And we try to like scrap it through like day in and day out, but like that's such an easy approach. And then this has nothing to do with what she did. I'm pulling this up because I don't remember the name of it, but #expert. You guys know what that is? Welcome. Look at this GQ looking guy. So #expert is an app that you could get. They have a free trial for a few days, but I started using this app. I think it's $90 for the year, $89, something like that for the year. What it does though is really cool. So you actually type in, like, let's just say you do a session and it's on advice, like, you know, a recording on like life advice with a real estate twist. So you put in, you know, advice real estate, and it will pull up, you know, 25 different hashtags that you should use to get the best results with those 2 things being the criteria. So all you do is you hit copy and just drop it in, and now it'll shoot out to 1 million different channels, and that's how you pick up a lot of followers quickly. So I thought it was a really interesting approach to it. Definitely been using it, and I can tell you from the second I started using that and started doing videos like I am, to like, you know, now I probably picked up 100 followers like this. I mean, very quickly. So I would suggest doing that.
Hashtag what?
#expert.
Thank you.
It's free to download. #expert. It's free to download, but it's going to cost you like, it's about $90 for the year. It's like not very expensive. All right, so I'm through the first leg of the trip. That was engage. The second leg of the trip's a little bit shorter. It was 3 days. And I had the option of going in a million different directions. I chose to go down to Newport Beach. I went to Newport Beach very specifically because of this next person. You guys have heard me talk about him because I talked about him at either a last session or 2 sessions ago, something like that. But Cyrus. So Cyrus Mohseni he's just brilliant. He's a independent broker in Newport. Really, really smart man. And so he's a 30 under 30 with me. We hit it off at 30 under 30, and I think he's 28, like he's young. But I mean, he's just like a really brilliant mind when it comes to technology and how he approaches the business and all that stuff. We vibe, there's no question about it. So he's got 40,000 followers, by the way. So he's also an influencer. But he said something, and it's kind of I put these back to back because they're still along the video concept. Video and Instagram are like heaven made for real estate. I mean, that is the greatest combination that you could start to do, is those two things, if you want to really build your followers and ultimately your clientele. What he did was an interesting twist on it. So what he talked about, first of all, the first thing is zero editing. So I'm not saying don't edit it and just put out garbage. Like, that's not the point. He personally edits nothing. And he goes, this goes back to that hourly cost thought process. So what he said is like, what I found was I was doing all these videos, and the hardest part about it was taking me a long time to edit them. Like, so I was creating this content, and he was like, I was trying to do it personally, and he was like, then I tried to hire a local videographer to do it. Close your ears. He was like, I tried to hire a local videographer to do it, and it was just like, it was expensive because I do a lot of video content. And he goes, so what I did he's like, I went on Fiverr. And he goes, I don't hire Fiverr to do anything else except for video editing. He goes, there are so many people on Fiverr. If anybody don't know, it's just like freelance, like videographers that you go online, they have like an app and all that stuff. But he goes, I went on there, he's like, I found like videographers that basically just create clips of video content for social media, specifically for Instagram. And he goes, I let them do all my editing. He goes, I send them an hour-long session, and I say, break this into as many clips as you can that are bite-sized pieces that I can put on Instagram. And they basically send him back 50 different things that are all labeled, and he just drops them out. It was just such an easy approach. So I never heard that approach before, and I've heard of Fiverr before, but not for this. So that was something that I wanted to bring up. The other thing, and this is something that I'm definitely going to do, so if you think I'm a weirdo, now you know why. Every single time he answers a question for a client, it's a recording. Every single time. So he literally takes, by the way, I'm going to show you that. I'm going to flip a slide. I went out and bought this. It cost me $20 on Amazon. For those of you who want to know what it is, it's UB size tripod. It cost not even $20. It cost me $18 on Amazon. This thing, your phone just it moves in a million different directions. It can hang on to things, whatever it is, so you never have to worry about where you're putting it. Your phone snaps into this. I put it on top of a table, and I just press record. That's the whole expense related to this. So what he was talking about is, he was like, so he's a broker as well, and he was like, so one of the things that I do is, he goes, I have one of these sitting on my desk at work. He goes, somebody walks into my office and says, hey, Cyrus, can you tell me about, what goes into a mortgage commitment? And he goes, not a problem, I'll answer it. I'm just going to record this for you so you have it for later. And so the person just, sits there, he presses record, he answers the question, he sends that person a video, and then he has that content for the rest of the time to use for every other agent that asks the same question. Imagine that. It's the easiest thing in the world. And the truth of it is think about that in your business. So how many people asked you okay, the home inspection's coming up, what are we going to do next? What do I do for the home inspection? Who do I call? What do I do? Record a video and send it to them before they ask. Think about that client service. Customer service just skyrockets because you're immediately giving them a response before they even ask for it. Those are the type of things that will make your life easier, and it's simple, it's free. If you really want to make it perfect answers, record it 55 times until you get it perfect, and then send it out. And now you have my home inspection speech for every single client that you ever worked with in time. It's just going to save you time and effort in your business. It's a no-brainer. Once a day, every day is his approach. It's like showering. So in terms of recording video or putting videos out, I asked all these people, what is your cadence? they all said the same thing. Put a video out every single day. Put a video out twice a day if you can. And I was like, whoa. Like, and they're like, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. Like, it only takes, we time block. Like, it only takes me, a couple hours a month to record these, because in a couple hours of video recording, like, you're effectively like getting all these little clips, because you only want to put out video clips that are like a minute long anyway, 30 seconds, a minute long. So like, we're overthinking this. What's up? All right, this has nothing to do with real estate, but I just have to throw this in here because I had never heard of this before, and I was like, you guys know what Turo is? No? She's waving her hands. So, I know. So, what, Amy? Oh, you told me about this before. I just never, you did. I forgot about it. So, I was in LA, this is gonna take 30 seconds, but I was in LA and I was trying to rent a car to go down to Newport Beach. And like car rentals were just insanely expensive. And I finally found, I wanted to get like just an SUV to drive around, and I just couldn't get one that like was anywhere close to the realm of reality. So I started to look at Honda Civics. And then I was on the phone with one of my friends and they were like, why don't you just go on Turo? And I was like, Turo? What the hell's Turo? And they're like, it's Airbnb, but for cars. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, you gotta go on it. That's what I was driving for the price of a Honda Civic. I mean, it was such an awesome experience. Like, basically a Porsche convertible for a Honda Civic. That was the exchange. So if you see me riding around like that, it's because it costs like a Honda Civic. But forget about the gas price. Do you know I only had to fill up the gas tank once? Because I was driving only like an hour and a half away. All right, so part 3. This is skipping to President's Council. This is a loaded section. I'm just going to tell you, there's a lot in here, and I'm going to go on a deep dive on some of these topics. So it was in Seattle. Seattle's a beautiful city if you haven't been there, really cool place. But we, number 11. So the first night I was there, I got there a night early before the event because I was in between sessions, and I had dinner with Jim Anderson and Chris Mygatt. I would not expect you guys to know these two people, but you might know who they are if I kind of give you at least Chris Mygatt. Chris Mygatt is the creator of Listing Concierge. So he's the one who launched it in his marketplace in Denver. Very smart man. He's become a really good friend of mine. We worked on a company called Company of the Future years ago, and I literally was meeting with him 2-3 times a week for hours. So we became very close. He now switched over. Now for years, he was the president of multiple operations for us. Think Rob Norman. Like, he was the president of multiple operations, and then he started to do special projects, Listing Concierge, a couple of other projects. And more recently, he switched over to the mortgage side, to GRA. Do you know Jim Anderson or no? Okay, so Jim Anderson is GRA's, Guaranteed Rate Affinity's partner on, with Coldwell Banker. So that's like, these two guys run our partnership. So awesome conversation that we had. It was really, it wasn't, I know we're talking about mortgage, but like it was beyond mortgage. It was like the whole real estate industry, in general. And there's some of this stuff was pulled from other conversations, but primarily from this. So let's talk about guaranteed rate. First of all, the thought process, he's raising his hand. So the thought process on this that I thought was interesting is where we are in the real estate market, like where we are in the industry in terms of like where we're going. So we're at a time where we had like no inventory and we had all this like, craziness going on, and now we're seeing a little bit of a shifting market, and there's all sorts of weird stuff happening in the real estate market. And we talked about like the exchange between a broker and an agent and how that partnership could work when I talked about Michael before and Nike. So let's go with industry deep dive, because you guys are all in this industry, but I don't think you realize what's really happening all the time. And I think it's so important for you to understand what's actually happening in your industry that you're in. So let's look at the agent side. Whether you realize this or not, most of you do because you've gotten the benefit of this, real estate splits are rising by approximately 3% a year. And I put an asterisk there, I'm gonna get to that asterisk in a little bit. So they're rising by 3% a year. On average. This has nothing to do with one broker, God bless you. This has nothing to do with one broker or another. Which means the broker side is going down by 3% a year on average. That's pretty basic, it's just flip-flopped, right? You guys feel this or no? You feel like rates have interest rates, not interest rates, feel like commission rates have risen over the last 5 to 10 years? I have. I mean, I look at the numbers and I can tell you like it's different than it once was. So when you look at the broker side and you think about that, the question then becomes like, all right, well, what about expenses? Well, we're in a period of inflation. Expenses are going up. So it's not like expenses have gone away. Expenses we just talked about rental prices have gone up, the price of electricity has gone up, to get a piece of paper it's gone up, everything's gone up. So expenses have risen, the amount of retained dollar, the amount that brokers are receiving has gone down, which is not necessarily a great recipe for like financial growth, if you think about it, and that's the industry we're in. This has nothing to do with Coldwell Banker or anybody else. This is like industry-wide. So there's a couple of realities that we're facing. Brokerages are making less money, they have higher expenses, and a recession is looming. So how do you approach this? If you're a brokerage, like what's the right answer? And what I'm gonna do, because I feel like this is something that could benefit you guys, is we're gonna talk, and by the way, when anybody says to me, raises their hand and says like, oh, I was thinking about opening up my own brokerage. Not the time to be doing that. Like, it's never the time to open up a brokerage because we're gonna see a lot of consolidation in this industry, but like, this is especially not the time to do that. So, how do we approach this is the question. And I'm gonna talk about two competitors and us, because they're the only ones that matter in my mind right this second. Because a lot of these people have kind of like fallen out of grace in terms of like the real estate industry. So the first is EXP. Some of you guys have asked me about EXP before. I have one slide on EXP, I think. I maybe have two. But it basically is a very short and sweet answer to how they're approaching this problem. There's no branding. They don't spend any money on branding whatsoever. That's not their deal. They have no offices. So you don't have any expenses related to offices, so that's also not their deal. No salaries, because they don't have managers or staff. They have like one broker for the state, and then basically you go into like this little like avatar world if you want questions answered. So that's like not an issue for them. They don't have an expense issue. They charge monthly fees, so that's how they like kind of like get like, you know, people that are unproductive. They don't care if the market goes up, goes down. It's kind of irrelevant because their monthly fees are what's keeping them alive. So that whole thought process, that's EXP's model, is no service, salaries, or locations equals very limited expenses. They are winning, if you want to call it that, on the expense side. Like, I don't want to do business like that personally, but that's how they're attacking this problem. They're attacking expense. Like, so you could win, if you think about any business owner, you could win on the revenue side or the profit side, you can win on the expense side. You got to win on something. That's their approach to this. So if you think about Coldwell Banker, you know, juxtaposed to EXP, we do brand significantly. We spend a lot of money on branding. Like I'm just using New Jersey specifically, we have 46 different offices. You know, we provide service, that's who we are. So we have managers, we have the lovely Lynn Keller, we have Jamie, we have trainers. If you didn't get my email, read my email, because we have plenty of trainers. It's a matter of just using them. Like, we don't charge fees. So clearly we're not taking EXP's approach. Like, that's just not who we are. Like, we're not gonna win by limiting expenses. It's not the way we win at all. Let's talk about Compass. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I get more questions about Compass than anybody more recently, because Compass is the one broker locally that has had an impact on this marketplace that's newer. So that's the one that they've been ripping apart Keller Williams specifically. Like, Keller Williams, a little bit of Remax, but mostly Keller. So when you look at Compass, and I'm gonna do a very big deep dive into this because I wanna say it once and I wanna keep it moving. So here's the deep dive. Real estate splits are rising by approximately 3% a year. That's the industry average. That little asterisk, this is why I hate Compass's model. Like, and I'm serious about this. I could have easily have been at Compass. Compass approached me before they approached all of you. And the reality is like, I don't like their model. I think it's destined for a problem, and we're gonna talk about why. So Compass, they front load their contracts, they pull back on incentives later. You guys have heard me talk about some of this, but I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail than I ever have before. So how do they do that? So let's talk about how they structure their deals. In year 1 and year 2, if this is the average splits that are out there, and keep in mind, it's all relative, so you might be here if you're a top producer, you might be here if you're lesser, so it depends on the person. But year 1, they will give you grossly over what the market is willing to give you, period. They will pay you more. Usually, like for bigger producers, they'll do 110% of your GCI for year 1. It's a lot. I mean, most of you are running around, we're at 70, 80, 90, whatever it is, like you're not thinking about 110, and they do it in a structured different way. Now, if you think about it, if somebody gives you 110% of what your value of your business is, they gotta make the money somehow. So how are they making money is the question, and that's what I'm gonna go through. I put this in blue because depending on the individual, they're gonna either do year 1 or year 2 in terms of deals. Might be a 1-year deal, might be a 2-year deal, it depends on the person. You guys pay any attention to Matters Magazine? So I look at it every month, and Matters Magazine in the last couple months has become Compass Magazine. So there's a million different ads of Compass. Like, well, why is that happening? Well, the answer is this. Because they've gotten a bunch of people from Keller and a bunch of other brokerages, and they're overpaying them for year 1, and a lot of it is marketing incentives. So these people are going out and just spending, they have to spend the money or they're gonna lose it. So they're going out and they're spending money on things like Matters Magazine, and that's why you're seeing this big push. So some of you and some of the people like that, in our brokerage will come to me and be like, oh my God, I saw this ad and I saw that ad, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, yeah, but you don't understand. They did this ad and that, and I'm like, yeah, I understand, but it's part of this. Like that's half the equation. And so then the question becomes like, well, what do you mean half the equation? Well, the answer is half the story. So after you go through this, the next piece of it is this. It's the handcuffs. So the way that they structure their deals is basically you have a 1-year or a 2-year deal, and then you have a tail at the end of your deal. And the tail basically drops you back commission split wise and takes away incentives. Now, some of you guys are like, yeah, you're biased. So I'm gonna use Compass's financial report to explain this to you, because who better than Compass to actually show you this? So their claim to Wall Street is we could get agents to accept lower splits as industry splits rise. That is their thesis. That's what they're trying to prove. That is what's going to dictate their success or failure. I am betting against this thesis. And I'm going to explain the reasons why, and believe me, I feel very confident that I'm right on this. So this is literally from their financial report. Like they push this to their investors. What they're showing you is, and I'm not going to explain this whole chart, I'll keep it quick, but they have different, this is the people that they brought in a while ago, or brand new people. This is the people that they brought in. They're different cohorts, so it's based on time. You're gonna get all these slides so you can read through them in your free time, but basically what this is showing you is Compass's goal for profitability hinges on reducing splits paid to agents over time. So their thought process is, we were paying agents this, we're gonna pay agents this, eventually we'll pay agents that. That's what they're trying to get to. And they literally are putting this out to their investors and to Wall Street, so don't believe me, believe them. So that's their whole profitability scheme is on reducing people's splits. So what are they doing? They're basically saying they have a long-term goal. Long-term is 2025 based on their actual company projections. They're going to say this is the retained dollar going up over those years. That's what they're trying to prove to Wall Street, that we are going to get more and more retained dollar over time. Again, Compass, not me. Compass is showing their investors how they plan to lower agent splits over time. Now there's this theory, and this goes back to the whole, when I go with the Braveheart conversation about how wonderful they are. I heard that about Keller Williams for years. So I hear this all the time. Compass is only taking top producers. They won't bring in any new producers. Okay. So in Compass's report to investors, they basically speak to these 3 points. Agents generating below 150 of annual income generates us 90 basis points more. They make 9% higher on people that do under 150. If Compass had the exact same distribution of agents as the market, it would result in an increase of 5 basis points. So they're basically saying to investors, we need to get to the point where we have lower producing agents because we'll make more money off of them. We assume 190 basis points will be realized by the year 2025.
Compass is acknowledging that they can make more money off of lower producing agents and outline a plan to shift in that direction. This is what they're telling their investors. So when they tell you all this bullshit about like, oh, we only bring in top producers, it's not accurate. That's not their move. That's exactly what they're talking to their investors about, is they're going after the lowest points in the marketplace. Compass agents, you are the customer. So this is a report that came out more recently. It said in the first quarter of 2021, Compass agents generated $1.1 billion in revenue, were paid $900 million in commissions. So it's an effective split of 80.8%, which is a noticeable drop from the last year, while its brokerage peers paid proportionally more. So I want to explain how this is happening because I don't think most people realize it. Compass splits are decreasing annually. That's their move. The way that they're doing it is really, and this is coming from Refkin, so again, you don't have to believe me. In its public filings, Compass attributes this favorable decrease, their words, not mine, to the change in the mix of the commission arrangements we have with our agents and changes in geographic mix. The agent economics are changing in Compass's favor, and Compass is retaining more of the commission. So 2 ways that they're doing this. The first way is mix of commission, which I love that way of saying it, and geography. So let's talk geography because I think this plays a big role in the rest of this conversation. What Compass did, and by the way, forget about Compass for 1 second. Real estate in general, this is the way real estate has always worked. It typically moves left to right across the country. So like new ideas and new models and all that stuff typically generate in California. That's where a lot of this stuff starts. And then the trend lines move this way. The market also trends that way. You'll see like in most markets, you'll see like, California get hit first, like when the market turns and then it moves this way. I don't know why it does that, but that's just the truth of it. So Compass's funding, most of their acquisitions, they had a lot of big acquisitions that they made early on. It started out in California. They brought in a lot of these people. There's a reason why I'm telling you that because it plays a good role into like what the future holds. So what Compass did is they got this crazy financial backing from SoftBank. SoftBank, who backed WeWorks and several other brands, they basically gave them a $450 million investment. Think of me, if I had $500 million that I wanted to spend and Compass convinces me that why I should back them, that's what it took. Like it literally took one man to say, I want to back them. So that's what happened. $450 million. They had 12 acquisitions. Like they got some more money from SoftBank, or from, I think this was when they, this is SoftBank. So 2 acquisitions. So most of those acquisitions were made in California. Like, why is this relevant? Why does this even matter? Well, in California, they're past this cycle, or they're like here, depending on when the acquisitions were made. So this is like, kind of like, I think history tends to repeat itself. And when you look at what they've done in California and what has happened in California versus what is going to happen as they spread across the country, it tells a lot of the story. So the Compass boomerang, I love this expression, you're gonna laugh about it, but I'm gonna just show you. He's gone, Steve Frankel leaves Compass, returns to Coldwell. Kristen Jordan heads back to Element from Compass. At Properties poaches agents back from Compass. Coldwell Banker nabs the top, this is more recent, this is from January this year. We brought the top-rated team, female-led team in the country, top-rated team in San Francisco just left Compass to come back to us. So Compass boomerang strikes again. Now they have a name for it. So what they're describing as the Compass boomerang is, call it the Compass boomerang. The brokerage lost a team of Chicago agents who made a round trip back to where they came from. What you're seeing, by the way, there's more. The agency picks up 5 agents from Compass from Silicon Valley. Agents are going there. They're trying to test out the systems. They're going there for a big payout up front. And then what's happening is a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, all the incentives get pulled back and they pull the split back. Hold on 1 second. And they pull the split back in order to get to what they're trying to get to, which is lower agent splits. Like that's their goal, that's what they're proving to Wall Street. So the interesting thing is when you look at this period, that's where people are leaving, that's where people are like fighting this battle. Having brought people back from Compass, I could tell you I've seen this with my own 2 eyes. I know the bills that come in when you leave Compass, and they're doing it in really interesting ways that people aren't even realizing when they're signing these contracts. So like, I can give you a couple different examples, but like if you take a reduction in commission at Compass, they charge that against you. So if you're anything less than 5% at Compass, not that you should be, but if you're anything less than 5% at Compass, they're using that against you if you ever leave. You know, if you're at 4.5%, that extra 0.5% is being charged against you as a loss to the company. If you go out there and you use their tools like Compass Concierge, they charge that against you. Anything that they use, that you use, they charge against you. And the crazy part is the way their contracts are written is the tail doesn't end. So what I mean by that is, like, if you're in year 5 and you sign on for another, let's say, year, well, all of the money that you took for this entire time carries with you into that next year. So if you ever leave Compass, you have a really big bill. That's the way they operate. So they've moved from California west. The question is like, has this been successful? And the answer is no. Compass lost $494 million in 2021 and $188 million in the first quarter alone of 2022. They're buying business. That's what they're doing, period. But they're buying it with these corrupt contracts that are basically getting agents later. This means Compass losses are accelerating, and they're doing this during the hottest real estate market in the history of time. So 2021 was the best real estate market we've ever seen from a production standpoint, and Compass lost more money than anybody. So think about that as we're trending into the next stage of our real estate market, which probably is going to be recession. I'm, again, not trying to be doom and gloom, I'm just being real here. So when you look at this, and what Compass is trying to explain is our systems will get you to that next level of production. Well, that's not true as well, because if you look at Compass's transactions per agent, that has dropped like consistently for the last several quarters. They're getting less and less transactions per agent. So how is their technology improving the overall game for these agents if their transactions are going down? Again, not my stats. These are coming from true sources. So the company announced that their chief financial officer is stepping down. When you look at it from a Wall Street perspective, Wall Street is ultimately the judge of all this. What is Wall Street saying? Wall Street's saying that they're not doing what they say they're doing, because they started out at $20.15 per share, and now they're down to $4.51. Does that look like the sign of a good company going in the right direction? By the way, this is us. We've been very consistent even in a downtrending market. Wall Street does not like their strategy. So now Compass has this problem, and this is what gets to where we are. Compass has this problem because their stock plummeted, the market's changing. What is their pivot? What's the move that Compass has? So let's talk about that. So historically, their answer to everything is to just buy more market share, expand their market, go into different markets, and that's what they've done across the country. They've been on this spending spree across the country, and they just buy more market share, and it makes their numbers look a little better. So they've done this across the country. The problem is they're running out of cash. So their cash balances have been depleting every single year, every single quarter, which puts them in a really tough position entering into a downturn market. So now we have these drops in what their overall ability to spend is. So they can't spend their way to success. They don't have that option right now. That's gone away. So then the question is what does success look like? How do they get there? And the answer is they have to start to control the expense side. So they went out and they bought a title company a few years ago. They just shut it down. They bought it, I think it was in 2020 they bought this. They just shut it down. That was June 16th, 2022. Spent a ton of money to go out and buy this company, get rid of it because they can't afford to run it. So what else are they doing? They just dropped their workforce by 10%. This was last week. I think you guys saw the article I pushed out. So they're cutting their expenses because they can't afford to operate. They also have made an announcement that they're no longer going to do expansions. They can't expand into other markets because they don't have the cash to do it. So what paths do they actually have moving forward? The two paths they have are to cut expenses, which is stop expanding and reduce spending, which means that they're going to pull back on staff, which I just showed you in real form, which is happening. Both of these things are happening right now. Don't believe me, believe Robert Refkin. And then they have to grow profits. The only way you grow profits in a downshifting market, you're not going to do more transactions. That's not possible, especially when you're not expanding. The only way to build more income coming in terms of Compass is to go out and reduce their agent splits. That is their path. Believe somebody when they show you and tell you, because that's what they're telling their investors. So don't have to believe me. Go into their financial reports and look at what they're actually doing. That is their model. That is why in a marketplace, down, but in a marketplace that like when you think about where the market is going, when you think about like where the market is going and we know that the market's trending downward, I don't want to be Compass. I'm not afraid of Compass. I think Compass is going to have like crazy problems for years to come. I really do. I believe that with all my heart. And to take it a step further, I think the agents that went there are going to be boomerangs because I think that they're going to feel like, whoa, I went there and now you're pulling all these services and everything away from me and you're pulling my split, you're pulling my incentives away from me. Like, that's not a recipe for good things in a marketplace that's rising by 3% a year in terms of splits. So I know you guys have gotten recruited by Compass. I get it. I know a million people have, myself included. But like when people come to me with, oh, Compass is like, you know, shooting rainbows out of their mouth, like I understand all that, but like I don't see that picture. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a very different vibe, and I'm having these conversations with these people in California, these brokers in California that are recruiting Compass agents like by the truckload because people are like fleeing there as fast as they possibly can. What about us? Any question? You got a question about Compass? Fair enough. It means I did my job. All right. So let's talk about Coldwell Banker. We're not lowering splits, just to be clear. Anybody, and by the way, I don't really talk about this a lot, but I don't think I've ever spoken about this in front of a crowd. But when Rob Norman came into Coldwell Banker, you know what was the first thing that he said? And I absolutely loved this. He said, because him and I, like, just to give you context, we used to sit in the back of managers meetings together. Like we kind of grew up in real estate together. He's a little bit older than I am, but like it was this back and forth, like, understanding of what's going on and talks and all this stuff. And so, we used to complain about the same things. I never wanted to bring somebody split backwards. Like, oh, you had a bad year, so you were at a 70, now you're at a 65. Like, who wants to have that conversation? That's a miserable conversation to have. Like, the first thing he said was, we will never bring somebody split backwards again in life. It was the first rule that he switched. If you get to here, you're here for the rest of your career. Like, that's a very different approach than what we're hearing with Compass. Like, I love the fact that that's our vibe, because it's not about trying to penalize you guys, it's about trying to be partners with you. I want to be a partner with you. That's why I've tried to been doing it for the last 10 plus years. Consolidation is going to be a big part of what we do. I'm telling it right now. Like, that does not mean that you guys should be like, oh my God, they're going to get rid of services. That's not what I'm saying. What consolidation means is we just got to be smarter about how we approach it. So I put this email out yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever it was. I put it out about the consolidation of, we don't have a specific person in ADS, a Sarah Whitner, in our office. Why? It's a stupid model. Like, we should, because as soon as Sarah Whitner leaves, then all you guys are like, we don't have this service anymore. Like, you're killing me. The reality is, like, we have more people than we ever had, but they're just structured more intelligently. We're going to restructure a lot of things. There's going to be some changes coming in terms of restructuring. It's not to reduce expenses, it's to work smarter to make sure you guys have more service, to all of you. Talk about guaranteed rate. Jimmy. All right, so I always am transparent with you guys, so I'm just going to continue to be transparent on this. Like, guaranteed rate is a big part of our future. It's a big part of our future. Like, you have to realize that. They are going to highly incentivize and give rewards and all sorts of stuff related to usage of our mortgage partners. That's coming. Like, so it hasn't happened yet, but like, we have the breakers trip and all that stuff. Well, that exact same thing is going to be happening for mortgage usage. Because the reality is as the margins decrease and get smaller and smaller on the brokerage side, which is a good thing for you guys because it means you're making more money in splits. And that's going to continue for years to come. Believe me, that will happen. Like, as that happens, where do we make our money? Like, we have to make our money somewhere. We still have all these expenses. One of the biggest things that we make our money on is GRA. Like, because GRA, like, if you use GRA, if you use our title company, if you use our insurance company, we make about 4 times as much money off of that than we do off of a real estate transaction in today's world. Imagine if those numbers continue to go in that direction where they're shrinking. Like, it's a big difference. Like, and so when I say to you guys about, like, wanting to get like that, the relationship with GRA right, it's crucially important for our business. Like, it is. And if you guys want the best tools in the industry and everything else, like that's what drives it, more so than anything else in today's market. So I'm not going to be Weichert, and I like the fact that Coldwell Banker is taking the approach that they are, because they're not going to say, hey, let me shove this down your throat. You have to use our person. You have to do that. We're not taking that approach at all. It's actually the opposite. It's this. There's going to be rewards, there's going to be incentives, there's going to be reasons for you to use them. But there's one other thing, and I'm bring up these three as an example. So Sarah was first with us, brought her in, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. She came over, great addition, she's been doing awesome. Jimmy came on board, awesome addition to our team. Love having him in the office. More recently, I brought on Alicia. She's in our Jersey City office. I'm just using her as an example because what my mission is to build a mortgage office. Legitimately to build a mortgage office. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to be impacting Jimmy. The point is like, we want you guys to have whoever it is that you want to work with. The goal is I would love for you to build a relationship with Jimmy, build a relationship with Sarah, Alicia, whoever. But what we're trying to do differently is this last part, is that question mark. So for years, we basically have taken the approach of like, hey, we have Tom Begley for many years in Maplewood. So we had, Tom Begley, like you work with Tom Begley and like, he's your guy. Well, the reality is like, maybe not everybody's guy is Tom Begley. Like it's fine, that's okay, that's part of it. So you might have somebody that you're working with that you love. You're like, I never want to work with anybody else in life. Well, that's what this is for. Because part of my job moving forward, and again, I'm always transparent about this, so I'm just going to tell you straight up, is to get that person that you love working with over to us. Because I'm not trying to tell you who to work with. Work with whoever you want. But I will tell you, if you have a relationship, I want to get in front of that person. And the craziest thing, and this is the reason why I'm saying this in this particular session, is because of this. Mortgage demand falls to the lowest level in 22 years amid rising rates and slowing home sales. All of these people, all of these mortgage people are coming off the best year of their career. They had the best refinance amounts of all time. They had the best mortgage business that they ever had in terms of like home sales. All of them are in the same exact boat, and all of their business is getting cut in half right now. All of it, straight across the board. These people could use some help. We are writing nice sized checks to bring people over. We're giving really good incentives to get people over to make sure that we have the best loan officers in the business for you to work with, people that you already have relationships with. So the one ask that I have in this whole conversation is this. Go out to your mortgage person and use the script and basically say like, I love working with you. I would really appreciate if you take the time to, sit down with my broker, Michael Pennisi. I'm going to have him reach out, but I wanted to give you a heads up before I do. Please take his call and meeting. That's all you have to do. Just bring those people to me, and I guarantee you we're going to get some of these people over because we really do have the best of the best in terms of what we offer. Like, it's an easy way for us to build business quickly and give you guys what you want, which is the loan officer you want to work with. Off my soapbox. Number 12, Ryan Gorman. I promise we're getting there. I don't even know what time it is. Anybody who has to leave, by the way, you could go. I'm not trying to keep you too long, but I'm going to finish these slides. So, Ryan Gorman, CEO of Coldwell Banker. I was with Ryan for hours. We had like a 3-hour lunch together. And so I got to pick his brain. I got to listen to everything that he had to say like about the business and everything else. He's the smartest guy in any room he walks into. He really is. He's legit. So Ryan and I are talking and I go, Ryan, tell me about the sneak peeks. I want to hear about what do we have coming up that Coldwell Banker is doing differently, because that's what lights me up inside. Like, where are we going with our business? So here's some sneak peeks. You guys ever hear of Clients for Life? So it's a program that we have in a lot of different markets. We stalled doing it in New Jersey specifically because of COVID. But what Clients for Life is we basically put it together a list of events. This is from California. We put together a list of events that we're doing throughout the year and a list of raffles and all sorts of things that your clients could win and take part in. So one idea would be to get a box at Madison Square Garden with 40 different seats for the whole entire year. And make sure that we have a Coldwell Banker box there, similar to what you would do at if you're a Wall Street trader. And so you have special clients that like, you want to entertain, well, great, like we have a place for them. Like, and give, the idea of giving these opportunities to you guys to then leverage with your clients to make sure you get them in the fold and keep business and stuff like that. But we'll also do like, we might have 5 to 10, slots in a box where it's like, okay, like this month we're raffling off tickets to go see Billy Joel, like to 40 people to go see Billy Joel this month. So what you guys could do is you get this whole list of this, you put your clients into Prospect Square, which is what we have right now, and through Prospect Square, they have monthly client engagement. And they're gonna send things out to your clients on your behalf, so it's all branded to you. And it basically states, like, think of like a newsletter, but I will talk about a newsletter in a second. But it's a monthly thing that creates client engagement and keeps them loyal to you because they're like, wow, like, every month I get some cool opportunity that I would have never have gotten if it wasn't for my relationship with whoever. So awesome way to approach this. That's definitely something that you could expect in 2023. I don't know exactly when, but that's happening. Power buying. Anybody knows what power buying is? Oh, you guys are gonna love this. So what power buying basically refers to is, power buying is if you have a buyer, let's just say an FHA buyer. It's really hard to get an FHA buyer a house, like especially in today's market. Well, what if we could turn that FHA buyer into cash and make them a cash buyer? That's power buying. We have the resources to do that. We're rolling that out around the country, and it's basically gonna make your buyers into cash buyers and be able to like go out and compete on a very high level with whoever you have from a financing perspective. So that's something that you could expect to see in the next year, is what Ryan believes. Number 13, I promise we're getting there. Tim Foley, EVP of Operations, very good friend of mine. What Tim talked about is, I said, what are your initiatives right now? What's the goal? What are you trying to build? He said, we're working on a quality of life initiative. Quality of life initiative is basically, we're gonna fix all the problems that are broken at Coldwell Banker. Before we create all sorts of new products and push stuff out, we're gonna just fix what's broken. So I'm gonna list off 3 real quick things that are definitely broken, that are getting fixed. Teams. Anybody who has a team knows that our systems are not perfect when it comes to teams. They're going to be. That's the number one thing that they're fixing right this second, is they're making sure that everything that we do in terms of teams, every product, every service that we have is gonna be team friendly straight across the board. That's the first initiative that's getting pushed coming out. Second thing is agents in multiple locations. If you have an agent that works here and works down the shore and uses 2 offices, or works here and works in Albuquerque, like, you're gonna be able to have, all of our systems are gonna be working so they talk to one another. You don't have to worry about like being in different markets. So that's getting fixed. This doesn't affect you guys, but it does for especially bringing on team members. Onboarding. We have some systems issues. I know Lynn is like, yes. We have some systems issues with onboarding. That's getting fixed. So it's basically the quality of life initiative. Like, what can we do to impact our agents' quality of life to make sure all the little things that drive you crazy go away? And the way that they're doing that is they take all the complaints that they got from around the country, they compile them, they sort them into like, what are the biggest complaints we're getting? They start at the top of the list and work their way down. That's where the big thing that they're doing on an operations side right now. Number 14, I'm gonna go quickly on this. York Bauer, CEO of Moxi Works, and Chris Gunn, his right-hand man. So I got to meet the CEO of Moxi Works and basically just lob questions his way. I want to start with what he started with because I thought it was so powerful, and I think it like clicked for me when he said it. So, talked about a launch for a rocket ship. He said, okay, you're launching a rocket, and that rocket has a mission. The mission is to go to Mars. The mission is to go to the moon. The mission is to bring a satellite into space. Whatever the mission is. What's the most important of that mission? The most important aspect of the mission? It's not the launch. The most important aspect is to achieve whatever goal you're trying to achieve. The launch is a prerequisite for the mission. You got to launch in order to even get there. So we're in a launch right now with Moxi. It's not perfect. I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. It's far from perfect. There's glitches. There's going to be issues that we're working through. But the coolest part about it is his thought process is like, we're not even launching the full product to all of you guys because we don't want to overwhelm all of your agents right now. What we're doing is we're launching this to get it out there, and then the next step is we're going to add all sorts of pieces to it. And the thought process that he said, remember Toolkit CMA? Anybody remember Toolkit CMA? It was terrible compared to Moxi Present. But I remember when we launched when we moved away from Toolkit CMA, I got a lot of people that were like upset. Like, what do you mean? I use this every day. Like, it was like, whoa. But you guys, Amy's like, that was me. I agree. So, and it's the truth. Like, I heard like so much like pushback on this. But the reality is like Moxi Present like blows it out of the water. It's the same exact conversation. Like, we're in the same talk. Like, we had, InTouch, and some of you guys are like, I loved InTouch. InTouch was garbage compared to Moxi. It's like, there's no conversation. It's not even like in the same realm. So we're gonna get through the kinks. Like, I understand that there's things that we need to add to it, but he did talk about something that I thought was pretty cool. He said, let me give you an example. Somebody was arguing, like, I thought you said that there was gonna be text message marketing, like, in this. And he's like, there is text message marketing. He said, well, we don't have it. And they said, yeah, we didn't launch it in the original package because we didn't want people to get confused by it. But at any point in time, if you want it, just call the help desk and they'll turn it on. And I was like, okay. Like, so the whole point of it is like, this is not like, it's a watered down product day one, and they're gonna build on it. And what they're building that I thought was probably the coolest part, and he talked about winter is coming. He said, like, all right, let's assume that we're going into a recession. Like, well, what does that mean? What does that really mean? And this made me think of like what I was talking about with Compass, with like, Matters Magazine and all that. So there's this death spiral that he talked about. The death spiral is this: bad process, so you don't have a good process of converting leads. Most people in this room do not have a good process of converting leads. Some of you do. You're spending more money on leads because you're not getting the return on investment that you should be getting. So there's a reduction in transactions means less cash to spend on leads. Fewer leads means fewer transactions, and it's just the repeat. So you're basically just burning through money. Like, and that's, a lot of people do this. A lot of people go out and spend, like, I'm gonna spend, $10,000 on Zillow. Like, all right, well, that's fine, but if you don't convert Zillow very well, you're burning money. That's the problem that's existed. So what he said is the antidote is 82% of successful agents' business comes from their sphere. We all have heard that before. It's true. Your sphere is like what generates your business more so than anything else. There's no cash to going out after your sphere. If you use a CRM properly, you don't have to like really spend a lot of money, especially if you do videos and some of the stuff I've been talking about. It's the primary source of business. It's lopsided in terms of listings. More listings come from sphere than anything. More buyer-driven business comes from the internet. So when you talk about like, how do I get more listings? Lean into your sphere. Builds the agent's primary business asset for retirement planning. You're just building up this asset of sorts. You got to use the tools. Like, I don't care if you use Moxi, but you have to use a CRM. Like, you just have to lean into that. It's the best thing that you could possibly do. They also are investing heavily. They just bought something called ActivePipe. So what ActivePipe is it's basically software that like, it's a lead nurturing software and technology. So that's what they're doing is they're moving in a direction of saying like, all right, like we're gonna have better software for you guys to use. The cool part, and I don't know if you know this, they're actually the industry largest body of data. They have more information and more data in it than any other software company in the whole entire US. Like, on the real estate side, obviously. 40 million consumers' names and growing. So if you think about this, like they have the data, they now are buying into incubation software to help use that data better. This is only going to continue to build. And what I loved about this presentation is he talked about this. He said like a surge protector. He goes, if you plug an outlet in, or a plug into an outlet, like you have 1-2 outlets. He's like, but our job is to essentially be a surge protector and try to create more opportunities to plug in. So they're creating this open ecosystem where any tool that you want to use will plug right into Moxi. Like, that is a really good concept. That's the way that it should be. 15, last one, Debbie Lewandowski. Debbie Lewandowski is the top manager in the country for Coldwell Banker. Her and I have been battling it out for years on certain things. I love her. She's a really good friend of mine, and she's freaking brilliant. So I was talking to Debbie, and anybody know who Tim Smith is? So Tim Smith is her agent. Like, Tim Smith's in her office. Great guy, and also a serious producer. So when you talk about Debbie, I said to Debbie, I said, listen, you're doing a lot of great things in building your office and the operation you're working in. Like, but I've talked to a bunch of your agents, because I have, and I said, the number one thing that people talk about from your office that's like the best of the best, always is the same thing, masterminds. Every single person, that's what they talk about, masterminds. We have the best masterminds out of anywhere. I would never leave this office. I would never leave this operation. I get the best information, blah, blah, blah. And I said, teach me your ways. And so she did. She basically, she gave me every drop of information she has about masterminds. She's like gone into like serious training on how to do masterminds. And I'm gonna drop this on you because I'm definitely leaning into this. Like, this is what we're gonna do. Like, Debbie, obviously I love having you. Like, we're gonna have producers from other markets that are coming in and basically, are gonna be part of what we're doing. I'm gonna invite them in because I feel like that sharing is what's gonna get us to that next level. I'm gonna break you guys up into groups based on production level. Like, and just say, like, you know what? If you're a top producer, like, well, there's a middle producing core, there's like people that are newer in the business. Like, we're gonna start doing mastermind sessions on a regular basis, and there's a very structured way that this is done. It's not like, let's get together and talk about a topic. Not at all. Like, you come in the room, there's gonna be stuff on the wall that you have to fill out. Like, it's like a very structured way of approaching it, and I love it. I was like blown away by the way she approaches this, and I just wanted to drop the seed or plant the seed that like that is definitely what we're doing moving forward. You could buy in or not buy in, and I know some people are gonna take the approach of like, I don't wanna give away my stuff. People in the room are competing against me. I don't wanna hear that. Like, abundance mentality, like we are all, we could grow the pie collectively together, and that's what we're gonna do. So, that's all I got. I'm not even gonna go into the bonus today because there's just too much, but any questions? You guys are like waving the white flag. You know how long it takes me to put these things together? You don't even, you want the bonus? The bonus is simple. I just basically said 3 quick things. What's your favorite thing you learned today? What are you gonna implement? And what are you most excited about? So, Jimmy. Thank you guys so much. I know I talk too much, but I had a lot of stuff to cover. So I really appreciate it.